Hey, this is Tony Robbins. Listen, thanks for joining me for this podcast. My entire passion in life is helping people to create an extraordinary quality of life. That means life on your terms. And one of my obsessions for the last 38 years has been business. And the reason is because most of us spend more time in our work and our business than we do with our children even, than we do with a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or those that we love. A business becomes an extension of a person's identity. And so I found that if you can help someone transform their business, to a great extent, you transform their life, because it's the place that causes them to grow and expand and to find a way to add value. And my passion for business is really simple. I love seeing people take control of their own lives and create the life that they deserve by finding a way to do more for other people than anyone else does. So this podcast has one purpose: to truly help you create business breakthroughs, the psychological insights that can get you to go to the next level. Anything that's usually a chokehold on the growth of your business, 80% of that is the psychology of the owner, and 20% are the mechanics or the strategies. And I'm a strategist, and this podcast will have both. I'm going to share with you some of the best insights and strategies that I'm aware of in the field. But if you're going to really make progress, it's going to take more than just information or listening to podcasts. It's going to require some real change. And everybody wants things to be better, but nobody wants the change. If you really want to take control, if you want to make real progress, then let's begin the journey with this business podcast now.
Netflix, Starbucks, Apple, Amazon, Costco. What do these companies all have in common? Strategic innovation. All of these companies rewrote the rules for competition within their industry. They found unique ways to provide more value than anyone else, and that's why they're dominating. But strategic innovation is different than constant, never-ending improvement. While you can't run a successful business without making improvements, it's strategic innovation that will help you reshape the landscape of your business and, ultimately, take over your entire industry. Because the market will always be searching for something new. And you, not your competitor, must be the one to give it to them. You must always be looking for ways to create something more, new, or better than what currently exists. Consumers are no longer impressed with any one new feature or service for very long. They expect a constant evolution of improvement, or they will simply go elsewhere. That's exactly why Steve Jobs, for instance, held weekly meetings with his operational heads at Apple that would focus on the latest new products that the company was developing and envision the next steps for each product line. Apple was absolutely committed to strategic innovation, and they redefined each market they entered by creating brilliant products that put the competition to shame. Consider Starbucks. Known for its in-store innovations like the reverse French press Clover coffee or handmade sodas, Starbucks is constantly finding ways to cater to their clients. They're even testing out smaller express stores in high-density areas to reduce wait times. And many shops even have smartphone charging stations available for their customers. Strategic innovation is about standing apart and staying one step ahead. It's about ensuring sustainability and success. In short, strategic innovation is power. Now, let's hear more about what Tony has to say about it.
Are you ready to rock and roll? Well, we're excited because this morning what I want to talk to you about briefly is this concept of creating strategic innovation. Innovation, everybody thinks about. Yeah, we got to innovate our product, we got to innovate our service. But remember I said, all business really is, not me, it's Drucker who said this, is marketing and innovation, or innovation and marketing. You're creating something, innovating something, bringing something to the table that's more new, alive, a reason for people to do business with you today that gives you a competitive advantage because there's more added value for them to buy your product or service than anybody else. Then you got to market it. Those two forces have to be institutionalized in your organization. It used to be you could come up with a killer service. You could come up with a killer product. And you could run or promote or market that product for 5, 10, 15 years. And as long as it's a great product, you could own the marketplace, especially if you were first. Today, market cycles. I remember, for example, in the early 90s, Sony used to have a market cycle where they build a product and they would have about a 4.5-year market cycle. So in the days, let's say, even the 80s, when they were building like a Sony Walkman, when they built Sony Walkman, in those days, their market cycle was in the 7-year frame. Then it went in the 90s to 4.5 years. Anybody know what the market cycle is now? In other words, they create a product before they know they got to replace it and improve it and sell it in that business? 6 months. 6 months. They know that if they are going to hold on to a customer every 6 months, they have to find some way to take it to the next level. And by the way, Sony used to do that. And they owned the marketplace. Who replaced them in the sense of innovation when it comes to technology? Quick. Apple. Sony was the Apple. But interestingly enough, Sony got to the point where they stopped doing the same level of innovation. They started coming out with products that looked different, but there was no real innovation. Innovation isn't just looking different. Innovation, by the way, can be looking different. Looks can be an innovation, believe it or not. But it can't be the only innovation over and over and over again, or customers just get used to it. It doesn't mean anything. There's not enough added value. So what is strategic innovation? It means training everyone in your organization to think, we have two jobs. I don't care if you answer the phone, or you work in the stock room, or you're in marketing and sales, or you're head of accounting. I don't care who you are. We do two things here. We innovate and we market. Anything you can figure out, anything you can bring to the table that can help us to innovate, make our product or service better in some way for consumers to meet their needs. The more we can know about their needs and the more we can find to meet those needs, and anything you can tell us that can get us out there to educate people about why ours is better, any way we can get our message out in a unique way, we all need to know. You need to reward within your organization. Now, strategic innovation is different than just constant, never-ending improvement. Constant, never-ending improvement is a very, very important principle. If you're not constantly improving, you're definitely going to be passed up by your competition. But if you're thinking about strategic innovation, what it really means to me is rewriting the rules for competition within an industry, within an area. When you change how people compete, when you change the rules, you take over that industry. You shift completely the game. So in my industry, the vast majority of people spoke and still do for 1 to 3 hours, which many of you yesterday wish I was one of those people. But that's usually it, because what it was is about inspiration, right? It's inspire people. And what happened for me is 90% of them are an hour, 90 minutes. And I was like, it's wonderful. That's a useful tool. But, inspiration is like motivation. Motivation's nice, and it's like a bath. It doesn't last, but you still take a bath every day. But my view was, how do I get people into immersion? How do I put people in an experience where their life really changes? And so I changed the game, and people never even considered saying, we're going to do 3 or 4 days and nights where you're going to go 50 hours. No one will sit there. They won't sit for a 3-hour movie that someone spent $200 million on. But I changed the game. I changed the rules, because once people got the result, even if in the beginning it was tough on them, by the end, the level of transformation was so huge, it changed the rules, it changed the game, it changed the size, it gave me a brand, it let me dominate an industry. Because when people walk up to me throughout my life, the number one phrase, you can see me anywhere in the world, a dozen times a day, not in a seminar, I mean just walking around, is, oh my God, Tony Robbins, you changed my life. It's like, I always say, you changed, but thanks for the credit, I'm glad I helped. But they'll say that like clockwork, every single time. That's different than I like your product. That's different than I enjoyed your seminar. You changed my life. That changes the rules for competition. That created a different way of competing. Now, I didn't do it to compete. I did it because my passion was I love people, and I don't want them just to be inspired for the moment. I want to make sure they really have the tools, the skills, the ability, the shift that creates a lasting change in their life. And I wouldn't settle for anything less. So you don't have to do it to compete. You strategically innovate because you're obsessed with meeting the needs of your clients. That's the difference. Now, who's done this? Well, Sony did it in a really simple way. Sony didn't come and say, let's do some research and let's figure out what product people need next. Because when they came out with the Sony Walkman, the entire focus of the music business was on making things what? Bigger or smaller? No, when they came out with Sony Walkman, the entire industry was about making things bigger speakers, bigger woofers, bigger everything. Nobody was asking for smaller. Bigger equaled better, bigger equaled more money, bigger equals more status. So what these people did is they innovated strategically. It's the ability to reinvent the basis of competition within an existing industry or invent an entirely new industry. That's what Sony did. Morita said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could have the same quality of music that when you're sitting here in your chair with these giant speakers when you're walking around? He did not get that from a focus group. He did not get that by someone telling him. He just tried to figure out, what do people need that they don't even know they need? That's a different game. That's when you start to reinvent things. Otherwise, you're just an extension of everything else. What do they really need they don't even know they need? He really walked around, he talked to people, and they talked about how much they love music and so forth, and he just thought, gosh, people are traveling more and more, people are mobile more and more, I'm going to come up with this idea. And so now, we think of the Walkman, it's like this ancient dinosaur, right, this giant thing in your hand. compared to this little tiny, the newest iPod they've got that, is like the size of your fingertip. But the point of the matter is he created the industry. Now, Sony eventually lost out to Apple for a lot of reasons, and most of them are strategic innovation that Apple did and Sony stopped doing. It's that simple. So they're a perfect example of that process. So think of it this way. If you and I are going to really be effective, the secret is don't just improve, change the rules of the game. Change the rules of the game. You do that, the game changes overnight, and I'll give you an example most of you probably make use of. Starbucks. Did Starbucks change the rules of what a coffee shop was, yes or no? A little or completely? What was a coffee shop before Starbucks? It was a place that you got coffee and what else? What else? Yeah, you got bacon and eggs and sausage and, you name pancakes. That was a coffee shop. True? And people got their coffee. What they did is they came along and they said, you know what? People, I notice, the world's changing. People used to go after work to the bar, and they don't go to the bar before work. It's like people need a place to go between work and home to decompress before they deal with what's at home. And they said, they want to be social. Sometimes they want to be by themselves. And then this man didn't even create this, right? How did Howard find or come up with Starbucks? He went overseas. He was in Italy, and he saw these little coffee shops, these little bistros, and he was like, wow, I think that could work. All he did was model it and come bring it here. But he changed the game of competition. He wasn't competing with Denny's. He wasn't competing with these normal coffee shops. He was this high-end, super expensive. You got an identity by going there. You got a social experience by going there. You had a place to be able to go between your life to decompress. He changed the entire rules of competition. And by the way, he was first. The first one not to ever make one. The first one to get in consumers' hearts and minds. And once he was first, there are a bunch of people that try to copy it. They might even have better coffee. But once they're first as a brand, he innovated first and he branded first, and they own the market. And by the way, how much have they grown? How many stores did they have in 1998? 100 stores. How many do they have now? Last year, they ended with 15,000 stores in 10 years. That's what happens when you strategically innovate. He could never have made a coffee and made his product better and then sold and grown like that. The reason he grew like that is he created a whole new category that he was the leader in. That's what you have to be able to look at. That's what I mean when I talk about strategic innovation. Nike, we gave the example of yesterday also. Think about what Nike really did along the way. First, he sold, somebody else's shoes, meaning Phil Knight. Then he lost the contract, which looked like the worst thing in his life. I'm losing my product. But what did it make him do? It made creating a product of his own a total what? A should or a must. Come on, guys, a should or a must. By the way, that's what the value is of the marketplace right now for many of you. Your worst nightmare is, if you find a way to use it, the demand to strategically innovate. And if you do that, it could be the greatest day of your life. Even if right now you're scared out of your mind, take that fear as energy. And there's not a big difference between fear and excitement. Same kind of drive. One just has a sick feeling to it. The other has a little excitement attached to it. Right? But if you get that thing and just go, the meaning here is this is the gift, and I got to figure out how I'm going to use this gift. This is demanding a change. So what does he do? He innovates. He comes up with a product like nobody's ever done before, and it creates him on this explosive growth. Now, as he goes into explosive growth, other people start to copy what he's doing, and now he needs to innovate again. And he hasn't really come up with much innovation for a little while until suddenly his innovation is the way he marketed it. He changed the game. He no longer sold shoes. He made Nike, first of all, a sports company. He was the first one to sell $50 shoes, but he was able to do that because he was also selling you clothing. It was an integrated look and feel. And that evolved into selling we're a lifestyle. Just what? Right? And all of a sudden this lifestyle, and the lifestyle had all these members of the community. Michael Jordan, right? Tiger Woods now. And he started building that. And gradually they built from a sports company that sponsored events and everything else to now they're a community. How many of you use Nike Plus? How many of you run and use Nike Plus? I'm curious. Nike Plus, if you've not seen it, you go online, you type in, you get this little device in your shoe, and now when you go running, you can hear your music. It tells you how far you've been running. You can have Lance Armstrong go, hey, nice job, you broke your record. That's what happens at the end, total reinforcement. You plug it into your computer and boom, it tracks everything and you can compete with other people or you can track yourself. You want to play 3-on-3 basketball? They have a whole community. You go on anywhere in the world, click on, you'll find people that want to go play with you that day. What they're now doing is they're in your life every day. They're no longer a product, they're no longer a service, they're a community that you're a part of. That reinvents the way they compete. So guess what? Nike doesn't have to spend these ads. They got millions of people that log on every single day because it's a part of the ritual of their life. That's reinventing the rules of competition. Try that now and come out with a little company called Scooby-Doo Shoes and see how well you do. Maybe you do well by finding a niche, but you're not going to take over Nike, right? They've constantly found a way to strategically innovate, not just make something a bit better. That's the difference in what I'm talking about. Harley Davidson, before World War II, after World War II, rather, became this giant, incredible, arm of marketing. Because all these guys, that were GIs came back from World War II and they'd driven these Harleys and they wanted a Harley, and a lot of them wanted an identity for themselves, that they were still a badass and they weren't coming back to just being a normal person. And they built a culture. And that culture became very loyal. And the culture was promoted in movies, and it was an identity, right? Born to be wild, this crazy, outrageous person who's totally independent, owns himself, is tough as nails, totally masculine. Now, they went through this tremendous growth period, and then all of a sudden, in the 80s, the Japanese started building much better bikes. Lighter, faster, cheaper, stronger, and Harley started to just drop through the absolute floor. Harley was on the verge of bankruptcy after being around since the earliest days of motorcycles. And what turned them around? Strategic innovation. Somebody came in, the new management team, leadership team, and the CEO gets a lot of credit, but it was really a team. And they said, you know what? If we're going to innovate, we got to say, what business are we really in? That's another way you can find how to innovate. You keep thinking you know what business you're in. You think you're the person that builds casinos. That's only one way to look at your business. There's a much broader version of what business you're in. And they start looking around and saying, who are our customers really? What do our customers really buy from us? Are they buying a motorcycle? No. They're buying an icon. They're buying an identity. They're buying legacy. I mean, these are not just bikes, these are legends. And gradually they began to realize what we really sell at this stage, we've been around so long, we're really selling a heritage. We're selling a legacy. We're selling a lifestyle. We're selling a way to live. We're really selling nostalgia. A mindset, because baby boomers, they found, guess who buys the most number of motorcycles? What age today do you think? 38 to 50. It's somebody about to have, or in the middle of their midlife crisis, who says, I'm still a badass even though I'm old. And they begin to realize that's where 80% of these motorcycles are sold. So they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sell this identity not only to these people. If we want to expand the market between 38 to 50-year-olds, we're selling nostalgia. Some people aren't going to ride a bike, but they want the identity. And guess how they grew their business like crazy and expanded all their marketing? Started selling all the clothing like crazy. The market became create an identity. So I can remember, I never rode a motorcycle. Growing up, one of my cousins, was on a motorcycle. We had no money, so I couldn't afford one. But also, he actually crushed his leg and had stunted growth, one leg shorter and longer than the other. So I never went on a motorcycle. So I learned to fly helicopters later on in life and things like that. That was my idea of really kick-ass flying. And then I meet Sage, and she says, do you ride a motorcycle? And I go, no. And she goes, oh. I'm like, I fly helicopters. Come here, Rip the doors off. We're going to do helicopter surfing. It was screaming down in the water just as the curl's coming and pull up as the wave goes underneath it. But of course, she got motion sickness and threw up, so that didn't work real well. So I decided, I got this woman, I'm in love with her. She likes motorcycles, and her dad always had Harleys. So I reluctantly go to the Harley store thinking, what the hell am I going to do? Because I didn't have those iconic images in my mind of trying to be a badass with leather and all these good things. So I get on this motorcycle, and it's like, wow, it's like flying. I mean, this is really cool. It's a lot like flying. This incredible feel. So I don't have a license. I drive a motorcycle for 20 minutes, and the guy, I said, if I want to see the best motorcycles all at once, because I always want, the very best, how would I do it? He said, well, you'd go on this incredible rally. They do this rally in South Dakota, North Dakota, what's it called? Sturgis. And he said, it's happening this weekend. So I go, this weekend? They go, yeah, they're going to be like, 400,000 bikes there. So I said, can you get me a ticket? He goes, you don't need a ticket. You just drive in. I said, but I don't have a motorcycle and I don't have a license. He goes, that's a problem. I said, listen, can you arrange for someone who can rent me a bike? He goes, well, if you don't have a license. I go, come on, man, let's make a deal. So sure enough, he arranges. So I fly in my private jet so I can get on a Harley. So I can feel cool, right? So I fly to Sturgis and bring stage. I've only driven one of these things for 20 minutes. I've never had anybody on the back of it, and I have no license. But I'm going to Sturgis, baby. And I got my leather jacket. And my chaps, the full thing, ready to rock. So I get there, the guy gives me this thing, I'm trying to figure out how to orient him, going, come on, hon, get on the back, and she's looking at me like, can you really do this? And then we did this drive, unbelievable drive, and went down Mount Rushmore, and it was just incredible. And then we got there that night, and they said there were going to be all these bikes, and we got there, and there were probably 15,000 bikes, which sounds like a lot, but that's not 400,000. And by the way, Sturgis is this little tiny town. I'm thinking, well, there's a lot of bikes, but it's not terribly exciting. You get there at evening, and the only place that's the nicest place in town is the Best Western. So I took in the Best Western, which is probably normally $99 a night, and it's $600 a night that week. And so I wake up the next morning, and there's 500,000 bikes on the road. They all arrive that morning. You can't move, and I'm out of my mind. And I bought everything you can imagine, And it was the first time in my life people were going up to me with a camera going, excuse me, sir. And I'm like, sure. I was like, no, can we take a picture of your lady? It's a different world. But what Harley did, they got 500,000 people now that are showing up for these things. I mean, they transformed their business. The business exploded because they innovated. They said, we're not in the motorcycle business, right? We're in the business of nostalgia. So that's the reinvention that I'm really talking about. And you can do this at a small level. And I can't remember the name of the company, quite honestly. It's not a big name. You wouldn't recognize him anyway. But I met a guy in New Jersey. He kept telling me about how much his wife loved shopping at this place. But what blew me away is I was at his house, and a car showed up to pick her up from the store. And what happens is they don't compete on price. They know everything about their customers. And they don't even just send this stuff to your house. They send a limo to pick people up and bring them shopping. I mean, they have no problem with price competition. They're not worried about, recession, depression. Not at all. Because they've just reinvented the entire way of competing. If you look over here at the Wynn Hotel, see, Steve Wynn, interestingly enough, kept building these hotels, and he sold them all to the MGM, and then he went and built the Wynn. And the Wynn was supposed to be the highest end, in which he did. $2.3 billion was the first one. The Encore's $2.7 billion. And he changed the entire way of competing. He decided what kind of services, what he was going to do, and he wanted to own the high end. And you know what I found out? I went on this trip with him, and I found out something interesting. He began to realize that all the money, 80% of the money, is made in baccarat. And there are 50,000 players in the world that will make 80% of his profit. All those other things you do are minor, tiny compared to the sales that they make from 50,000 big whales that they take care of. And he wanted to have the richest, most exclusive, most extraordinary place on earth for them to go be able to do this. And by the way, baccarat has the best ratio, best advantage. The house has the advantage, but it's tiny. It's the smallest. So as a gambler, you've got the best opportunity, but that's if you play once. If I have the advantage even by 0.1%, and you keep playing, the longer you play, the odds are on my side. See, so he innovated. He went, you know what, we're going to build the most incredible place. Even when everything else is down, we'll get those giant whales to come here because we're the place to be. Reinvented the way of competing. He didn't have to build volcanoes and things like that. Build something really cool, really magnificent, but really made for a different market. He said, not only who is my customer, who do I want my customer to be? That's a question you need to be able to answer if you're going to really be effective. Because many of you are looking at your current customers, and your current customer's not buying as much, and you're going, oh my God, what do I do? Well, maybe I need to get them to buy more, maybe I need to get more customers, or maybe I need to get a different kind of customer. This is when we start to strategically innovate as opposed to just improve what we have right now to make something happen. So, let me very quickly give you this. There are 3 points I want you to know and think about when you think about strategic innovation. The first one is you really ideally want to be in a position where, if at all possible, I don't care what your approach is, you put yourself in a place where you want to be ahead of the curve. You want to be slightly ahead of the trend. You want to at least be on trend, but if you really want to be the innovator, you've got to be at the front of a trend, the initiator, if you can, of a trend. Because when you're first and you create a trend, you become branded, and that branding, if you do your job, is hard to get rid of. I'll give you an example. What was the first university that was ever built in the United States? Harvard. What was the first, for example, rental car company in the United States? Quick. Hertz. What was the first soft drink in the United States? Coke. And by the way, guess who's still number one in each of those categories? All three of those. And that's been more than 100 years, 150 years, 200 years in some of those situations. See, when you step in and you become the innovator and you create the category, everybody else has to fight for second place or third. In fact, Avis finally figured a way that they could strategically compete. They said, we're never going to be number one. So they said, we're not number one, we're what? We're number two, but we try harder. They created a new category, the try harder category. We're number one in the try harder category. They may be number one because they've been around forever, but we're going to please you. We're going to do something in a different way. That's the way that you differentiate and produce something. You know, you also, if you're there first, I'll give you another example. A friend of mine, the gentleman that financial person that I coached for the last 17 years, he introduced me to a man, and we're having lunch one day, and he goes, here's my friend, and we start talking. I said, well, what business are you in? He said, bottled water, but I'm about to get out of it. And I said, oh, that's interesting. This was like in the, I think, early 90s, if I remember, late 80s, probably early 90s when we had this conversation. He goes, yeah. I said, wow, what a trend. The idea that people could get us to pay for these bottles of water, you know, $2, $3, that everybody used to drink for free. I mean, that's the ultimate marketing. In fact, Coca-Cola and people like that were making more money. Some of them were charging more per ounce for water than for Coke, or than for beer, or Borden's milk. And it's just water. I said, that's amazing marketing. He goes, yeah, I was really lucky though. He said, I got in the mineral water business right as a trend happened. I said, what was that? He said, when people started saying it was okay not to drink, and he even started promoting designated driver, I thought this is a trend that I think is going to stick. You know, I think people are going to take advantage that they don't have to drink. They don't have to feel pressured to drink. And I think they're going to look for an alternative while they're in the bar. And he said, I thought the alternative was this little company I bought for $500,000 called Perrier. He bought it for $500,000. It was making $100,000 a year. He kept that company for 15 years and sold it for $2.2 billion because he was ahead of a trend. All right? And he was there. And by the way, people don't say, give me a mineral water. Most of the time, they'd say, give me a Perrier. In fact, Pepsi hates that people still often say, can I have a Coke? Because they're first. Right? And so in any industry, you can do that. You know, in my industry, the greatest compliment I get is speakers come up and say to me, oh gosh, guess what? I have these people tell me, you remind me of Tony Robbins. And I think, wow, I'm really complimented. I'm also going, great, I want you to be like Tony Robbins. That's a great compliment for me, a great compliment for you, but it also comes because I was your first baby and I did my job. I delivered in a category no one had ever done anything like. That's how you strategically innovate and own something. See, you got two choices. Try to go sell everybody, or have people, when they think of the best, they think of something they want, and they think of the best, they think of you. Very, very different game. Very, very different approach. Now, you want to be first ideally, but if you can avoid it, you don't want to be the ultimate pioneer in some businesses, because the pioneer, the Indians usually put arrows in their back. So it's nice to know the trend is real if possible. It's not always possible, but ideally near the lead. The other thing you want to do ideally is get in a game with infinite upside. Get in a game with infinite upside. If you're going to strategically innovate and you're going to create this new product, this new service, this new approach to things, you don't want to be in a situation where you spend all this time and energy and create something new that has a limited amount of upside. It's going to have a 3-month upside, a 6-month upside, or people can only do so much. Now, I didn't do this because I didn't enter a business and go, where can I go get the largest margin possible as a business owner? This was my mission. So I didn't do that. I didn't go, where do I do a business that I can go sell for 10 times, 20 times, 30 times? Where am I going to get the largest multiple? I didn't do that. I didn't look for infinite upside. In my case, it was just driven by wanting to serve. But today, as a businessman, entering into businesses, I'm going, what's a trend that's just beginning that I think has real legs? Is there a place, is there a way to partner where we're the leader in that trend, but also where that trend's not going to be short-lived? It's got infinite growth and upside. Where there's real opportunity. Then you start to think in a more strategic way. Is this making sense? Yes. Okay? So now, you might say, okay, Tony, this is all cool, but how do I do it? Here's what, I'm going to make this so damn easy. 5 little areas that if you go into these areas, you will automatically get the ideas for strategic innovation. In other words, if innovation needs to be a part of your life, and you're saying, okay, Tony, I want to innovate, how do I do it? If you do these 5 things, or even a couple of these 5 things, you're going to find yourself in a position immediately where innovation will start to happen, because your goal is not to be the innovator. Your goal is to have an organization that constantly innovates. Because if you're the innovator, then the entire business is still dependent upon you. But if you're the person that's creating innovation, by a system you've created, then the people can change, the environment can change, and the innovation is going to keep occurring. So here's the first of the 5. I want you to jot these down, and then afterwards, I'm going to have you jot down how you could use these 5. So the first one is, you need to get new voices. You need to get new voices. Now, what does this mean? Well, I know companies. One of my friends is a guy that's worth about $6.5 billion. He's a very private man. He's in New York City. Most people don't even know his name, because everything he does, he's in the background of. I have enormous respect for him because he gives away about $100 million a year anonymously each year to organizations that he thinks makes the largest difference in the quality of human beings' lives. Like last year he did one for a mentoring organization. He's just a wonderful guy. Totally private man. How does this guy, who's very quiet, he frankly, when you're in a room, you don't know he's there. At the end of the meeting, when everybody's talked, he might say something. He says it real quietly. People kind of lean in like E.F. Hutton, in the old days, to listen. But he has this incredible ability to take companies to another level. And the reason is, he just told me, he said, Tony, one of the first things I do, take over an organization, is I figure out what that organization is, what the trends are, and then I go find somebody else, a group of leaders to bring there. Not to run it, but because I know they're going to bring a completely different voice to the organization. And one example I'll give you that I know about, that he told me about from a friend of his, is remember when IBM grew like crazy? They managed to give away the most valuable thing in their entire life, the software to the IBM PC, to Windows. I mean, think about it. Here's a man, who runs Microsoft, this little company, this young boy who's creative and gutsy. He leaves college, Bill Gates, and he calls the guys who have the Altair computer and says, you got this computer and you have no software. I've written software for it. Which, by the way, he hadn't written one line of code, and he didn't even have access to an Altair computer. He just believed he could, and he sold them. And they got together and started writing code, and he figured out how to do it. He got the thing going. And then what was his big breakthrough? Did he write MS-DOS? No. How did he get MS-DOS? Someone tell me. MS-DOS, which is the basis of making all his money. Before he copied Apple's Windows, it was MS-DOS. He bought it. How much? Anybody know? $50,000 he bought MS-DOS. Then went to IBM and licensed with IBM to have it be the exclusive software for all their computers, and then for when everybody knocked off IBM PCs, clones became the basis of that. Just think about that, because most of you think of him, you think of this incredible coding genius, which he is, but he made all his money basically just by finding a way to reinvent the rules for competition. He let IBM sell everybody razors, and he sold the razor blades. And so IBM didn't make much money. In fact, IBM at one point, you remember, they were in deep trouble. And they brought in a series of new CEOs to turn things around. And they brought in, I don't know how to pronounce his name, it was Gestetner, the gentleman who came in, who was like the major turnaround guy. What's his name? Gertner, thank you. And Gertner comes in, and sure enough, when Gertner came in, the first thing Gertner did, it was brilliant, is he realized that for IBM to change, somebody interviewed him in an article, and this is where I saw it, and they said, will IBM be able to turn things around? Will they be able to come back? Will they be able to become a force in computers or computer services or any of that nature? And he said, I had the same question when I came on board. And he said, here's how I addressed it. I asked the question of our executive team, our leadership team, our management team, our marketing team. I said this: how many people do we have under the age of 40 who are based on the West Coast and Northern California on our core teams? That was the only question he asked. And he went, none. He said, and the answer is, we will fail. He said, because 85% of the innovation that's happening in the world is coming from the location called Silicon Valley in Northern California, and it's by people under the age of 40. What we have to do right now, if we're going to transform this company and innovate, is we need new voices. We need people who have a completely different voice. They have a completely different life experience. They will naturally cause us to what? Innovate. But we can't do this if we're like going to visit them once in a while. Proximity is power. Whenever you're around something day in and day out, it's going to have an impact on you. And you need to go get new voices. So my friend that I told you about from New York, what he's constantly doing is each year, even in companies he owns, he deliberately brings in some new key executives constantly, if for no other reason, but make sure he gets new voices. New voices will cause innovation to occur. It'll happen very, very rapidly for you. Here's the second way or place you can get innovation. New questions. New questions give you new what, my friends? Answers. See, a lot of times, you're starting out with a presupposition. Like last night when the gentleman raised his hand again and, came over to me initially and said, well, how do I do this when it's impossible? How do I do this when no one is buying right now casinos, not building casinos? How do I, presuppositions. His question guaranteed he couldn't come up with an answer. The quality of your question creates the quality of your answer. So I'll give you one example that's real fast, and then you can think of some of your own ideas here. New questions would be Bill Gates. I was talking with some people that knew Bill Gates, and I was trying to dig underneath, and some of you have been to my programs. Who's been to Date with Destiny? Anybody here been to Date with Destiny? Wow, quite a few. So you've been to Date with Destiny, all of us as human beings are controlled by what we focus on. Whatever you focus on, you're going to feel it, even if it's not true. So if you focus on the world's ending and you imagine the whole world's going to come to an end, we're never going to ever be in happy times again, you see it, you imagine it, you focus on it, you're going to feel it. But what controls our focus more than anything else is questions. Because if somebody asks you a question, even if you don't want to answer it, if you keep asking that person, just to understand what you're saying, they have to imagine it, they have to go in their head, they have to change what they focus on. Well, human beings tend to have what I call a primary question. One question you ask more often than anything else on earth. And you ask it subconsciously all the time. And people who do Date with Destiny discover it. And it's why some people, for example, might go out in life and they make all these great changes and it never lasts. Because the primary question they have is, why do I always screw things up? And it's an unconscious question. Why can't I succeed or sustain success? Or how do I make everybody happy all the time? Ain't gonna happen. But see, they're constantly asking a question that's unanswerable or moves them in a negative location. You change that question and you change what they focus on, their whole life changes. So they change the question to, how can I appreciate even more all the gifts God's giving me right now? And that becomes a primary question. They walk around in gratitude all the time subconsciously. So questions control the way we think. Whenever you see someone successful and they come up with a new answer, it's because they asked a new question. What question did Bill Gates ask that was different than other people building software? He did not ask the question of himself and his team, how can we build better software? Here's the question he asked, the exact question he asked, because repeated me again and again by people on his core partnership and team. He said, how can I become the intelligence that runs all computers worldwide? How can I become the intelligence that runs all computers worldwide? And when he asked that, he realized all computers have one thing in common, and that is if we're going to have computers be able to communicate to each other, we're going to have common software. The hardware may be different, it's the software, and that's why he got that. By the way, that question is also why he was late to the internet. Because the internet's not about controlling computers. It's a different question with a different answer about networking. So you got to ask yourself, what are some new questions? Because new questions, by the way, will start new conversations, and if you do it with new people, with new voices, innovation's going to go crazy. It's going to be institutionalized. Third question, or third new thing for you is new perspectives. New perspectives only happen if you get yourself in a new environment. There's a company called Nokia, many of you know. Who's got a Nokia phone in this room? I'm curious. Now look at this group of hands. Nokia was dominating the marketplace prior to the iPhone, complete domination of the marketplace for many, many years. Nokia was not a dominant source. Where's Nokia based? Who knows? Yeah, it's in a very, very cold, dark place in Scandinavia on the edge of the Adriatic Sea, and they were trying to figure out what customers wanted by working with engineers who are working there in Finland. And guess what? They weren't doing so well. But somebody in the group got smart and said, you know what? We keep making more and more technical phones, and we keep innovating the technology like they used to do with VCRs when all of us were kids. And they made so much innovation, and you didn't use any of it. So he said, you know what we got to do? If we're going to really innovate, we got to know what our customers want. But the customers we want, who do we want our customers to be? We want our customers to be leading edge people. We want the kind of people that influence other people, because people today don't just want a phone, they want an identity. They want to feel different. So they sent their engineers, these guys that are not marketing guys, because they knew they kept telling them change this, but they couldn't do it. They sent them to 3 places in the world: King's Cross, Australia, the east of London, and Venice, California. And they said, go live there for 6 months, interact with as many human beings and customers as you can, and then come back and we're going to redesign our phones. And you know what they all did? They all came back and they found the most important changes they could possibly make to the phone. And guess what it was? Color. Same thing that they did with Apple originally. They came out with the first ones with a red phone and a purple phone, and then a way in which you could print out off of your computer a cover for your phone. And then they came up with ringtones. So you could have a special, unique identity. That's what the engineers end up coming with because they were given a new perspective. Again, proximity to the customer in a radically different environment automatically created new answers for them or new innovations for them. And then fourthly, new passions. New passions, listen, when you're passionate, don't you tend to innovate by your own nature? Because you're doing something you love, you're doing something you're excited about. And probably the best example of passion driving a company is Virgin with Richard Branson. Most of what Richard has created in his companies was something that he experienced, a product, service that he experienced and disliked immensely, and said, this is what I'd want. And he was totally passionate about it. From where you get to stay when you go at the, to the airport and you're transitioning, he said, I want a place where I can play pool. I want a place where there's a swimming pool. I want to be able to have, massage. I want some great drinks. And so he reinvented it. I want to have a bar on the plane. I mean, that's what he did. Everything he's done, all the innovation that has set him apart has been because he's thought about something that he's so passionate about that if he had it, it would have lighted him up like a Christmas tree. And he felt that he's a representative of a generation, and he really is. And he's done incredibly well. And finally, the last one I jotted down for you is new experiments. If you're going to innovate, many of you don't innovate because you go, damn, what if it doesn't work, right? I mean, I only got so much time, only got so much energy. We can only invest so much money. We start to work on this, and right now we got a great business right here. I don't want to mess with my core business. You don't have to. Keep your core business where you're rebuilding, these casinos. But then create for yourself a couple skunkworks projects, a couple experiments. Almost all the innovation that happens at Apple, what happened? The Mac came from a skunkworks group. A group of people, they said, you know what? We're building the Lisa. All our money's going into the Lisa, the computer they're building at that time. But we're going to take this small group of people, and they're going to go work and see if they can reinvent something from scratch on their own. If it doesn't work, we don't care. We're going to try it. At Google, many of you know, people have about 20 to 25% of their time designed for skunkworks to work on some project they think is worthwhile. Google Maps came out of that. Twitter came out. The company is building these great resources, and this little side, stupid little project called Twitter. And now it's growing at 8,000%. They've already been offered, I think, $300 million or $350 million, right? Facebook wants to buy them. And they're at the beginning of the beginning of the beginning what's happening with Twitter. Total innovation. You can use these same resources. Twitter's an interesting example. I thought to myself, someone's telling me, you got to do this Twitter thing. And I'm like, Twitter? I mean, get a life. When I want to type what I'm doing when I'm doing it, I said, first of all, my wife would kill me because we have a private life. Because I said, oh yeah, here we are in Sun Valley, and all of a sudden people start showing up, right? I said, but second of all, it's like, who wants to read what I'm doing or what other people are doing? I have no interest whatsoever. So my buddy goes, I use it differently. So I said, what do you do? He goes, I use it to get answers. I said, what do you mean? He goes, watch this. He goes, Tony Robbins is here with me right now, beside me, and wants to know how I use Twitter. And he clicked the button, and in a millisecond later, there were 35 people responding, hey, Tony, hey, I went to your seminar, here's what you should do. And we're like, oh, these cool ideas. I was like, wow, maybe I'll open a Twitter account. So I opened a Twitter account without my name. And I did it, and I barely ever used it because since my name wasn't on it, I didn't interact with anybody. And I didn't put anything on there. It was like, what am I going to broadcast? Yes, I'm doing a seminar, right? Yeah, that's new information for me, right? But then one day I thought, there's all these people out there, and people kept coming up to me saying, would you do something to inspire me every day? And I'm like, another product, another service, I don't want to commit to that. And I thought, you know what? I'll just put a quote on my Twitter each day for something, just a simple quote, not just mine, other people's. It'll make me look for one each day, too, that I like. And I'll just share it. And if I find cool clips every now and then that I share with my friends, I'll share them as well. And I did that 10 weeks ago. And this morning we have 300,000 people. And there's 8 million people on Twitter, and we're number 35. And it's like, wow, this blows my mind. It's just a fun, cool little tool. So it wasn't much of a strategic innovation for me. Somebody else created the innovation. But sometimes you can use the innovation for your core business as well. And I use it again to look at, okay, here's just a little experiment I'm doing. You know, gosh, if this continues, maybe it won't. But if this continues, I have 1 million people that I could send a message to 3 months from now, 4 months from now, at the current growth rate. If it stays there. If it takes longer, but I like the idea. God, it's something I really am passionate about. I want to send a message to people, 1 million people like that. That's a great tool. And you know, there's a business application here somewhere for it. Most people haven't figured it out yet. I'm sure Twitter will find theirs. It'll be advertising or something. But, you know, it'll be a great tool for keeping people informed. And what's great is I actually read them all, but I have to respond to them all. It's like email, oh my God, another 300 messages. Twitter is like, oh, it's fun. Read it. People put clicks in. I go see what they're doing. It's a very cool thing. So again, you want to look at this and say, I don't have to change my business. Maybe there's some experiments I want to do in my business. And then here's some questions, 9 questions for you to consider. And here's what they are. Just I'll read them out for you real quick. What business are we really in? That's a question you got to keep asking yourself. Why are we really successful? Many of you think you're successful for one reason, but you're successful for something completely different. It's worth taking the time with your team to ask this question. Who is our customer really? Or who does our customer really need to be in the next 5 years? If you're going to start a business today from scratch and maximize impact, leverage, and profitability, what would you do? Some of you may be starting a business within your business to compete in this new world. What distribution channels are we not maximizing or using? What technology are we not using or maximizing? That's why I mentioned Twitter to you. What identity do you want people to associate to your business? Who do they become by doing business with you? And if you were going to create another industry from scratch, if you were going to create an industry within your industry or somewhere else, what would it be? So here's what I'd like you to do. Let's just take 5 minutes, literally, to brainstorm how are you going to get new voices into your business? By the way, do you have to hire somebody for them to be your new voice? Yes or no? So if you're a brand new, you're an army of 1 or 2 or 3 or 10, you could go get people. You can do it through a variety of sources. You can do focus groups. You can sit with a group of friends. You can get a group of your customers. You could use a service like Twitter. You could do all kinds of things. How are you going to get new voices? But be specific. What kind of voices do you want to get? Who would help you innovate? What kind of person could you bring to the table? Ideally, somebody on your team. But also, where could you get new voices? What are some new questions that you need to ask? I gave you these 9 as a sampling. But what are some questions you need to ask to innovate in your business? Where could you get a new perspective? Maybe after you hear Tony speak today from Zappos, maybe some of you, while you're still here in Vegas, might see if you might make an arrangement to go tour it. Take the hour tour and just go get the perspective of how a business that goes from 0 to $1 billion really runs. If I were you, I would do it. I took the tour myself, incredibly worthwhile. Where could I go right now to tap into new passions? Maybe not even my passion, maybe on my team. I've got some really bright people and they have passions and I don't even know what they are. Maybe their passions are the origination, the place that we get a genesis for a new product, a new service, or a new way to change the rules of competition. And what are some new experiments we could do? What are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 max new experiments we could try? This program here was the result of an experiment. I was watching television, listening to all the muck, talking to people coming up to me, telling me I don't know what to do in their business. And then I saw the figure, and I'd known it intellectually in the back of my head, but it emotionally hit me. 70% of all new jobs are created by small businesses. I picked up the phone immediately. I called my office and I said, you know what we're going to do? I want to coach 50 business people who have small businesses, 0 to 100 million. I want a variety. $100 million businesses, 50, 10, 5, just starting your business. And I said, I want to coach them for 90 days. And I said, we'll make it really easy. I'll do some kind of immersion. So we did a version like this. Instead of 5 days, we did it in a day and a half. So I basically killed everyone. And I said, then we're going to work online twice a month for about an hour and a half. And I'll keep taking different pieces of information, refine it. And I'm saying, we're going to transform their lives. And we're going to create a system. And once we have that system, it won't be limited to me and my throat. It'll be something that people can do in immersion on their own over and over again so they get the training effect. And I said, and we'll find the right partner, we'll market it together, we're looking for ways of transforming the business. We won't just teach them, we'll give them tools. So we'll team up and partner with the right people. And all this came out of being stimulated by something I'm passionate to make a difference in and doing an experiment. And then I got some new questions, some new voices, and now we're laying the foundation here this week for something that we're going to be launching that I think will be as big as anything we've done in any of our other companies. Listen, the purpose of a podcast like this is not just to inform, not just to educate you, but get you to take some action. So one of the most important commitments I've learned is anytime you learn anything and you find it has any form of value, the most important thing you want to do is while you're still in state, while it's still important, while it's still in your mind, you want to take some form of action. Whether that's as simple as saying, these are 3 principles that I want to really educate the rest of my team on at my company, or I want to take action on this today. I'm going to create this format today for my marketing or for my anticipation or for using the strategies that you've learned here. So before you turn this off as a final moment, just write down 2 or 3 key either principles that you want to remember or action items, and ideally do something to share it or do something to act on it today. Remember, knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. Really, truly, if you really look at what makes someone successful versus not, it all comes down to execution. Execution trumps knowledge every day of the week. So go out and execute, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
Do you have the right mindset and skills to take your business to the next level? Business Mastery is the only event in the world created by Tony Robbins to prepare you to master the mindset and skills you need in business to elevate your game. A one-of-a-kind, immersive program, Business Mastery will allow you to understand the critical factors impacting your business, then refocus and realign with the strategy and psychology you need to compete and innovate in any economy. Remember, business success is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. If you're ready to learn and master the strategies to help you grow your business and stay competitive, then don't hesitate. Apply for the next Business Mastery program now. Learn more about the Business Mastery event at www.tonyrobbins.com. The Tony Robbins podcast is directed by Tony Robbins, hosted by Anna York, and produced by Carrie Song. Brooks Loro is our digital editor. Tyler Culbertson is our media coordinator. Special thanks to Diane Adcock for her creative review. Our website is tonyrobbins.com/podcast, where you can listen to all of our episodes, read articles, and learn more about upcoming events. Copyright Robbins Research International.